The stars had never seemed so close. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Unity, watching the swirling lights of hyperspace fade away as his ship dropped back into normal space. After 300 years of dreaming about this moment, humanity had finally done it. They had broken free from their solar system and reached for the stars. "Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures ahead," said Lieutenant Amy Collins from her station. Her voice carried excitement mixed with nervousness. "It looks like artificial structures. Lots of them." Jake nodded and moved closer to the main screen. What he saw took his breath away. Hundreds of ships floated in space before them, each one different from the others. Some looked like giant crystals that caught and reflected light. Others appeared to be made of living metal that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. A few resembled enormous insects with wings that glowed blue and green. "First contact," whispered Dr. Lisa Martinez, the ship's chief scientist. She had spent her entire career studying the possibility of alien life. Now she was looking right at it. "We're really not alone." The radio crackled to life. The voice that came through was strange, with clicking sounds mixed in with the words. But somehow the translation computers worked perfectly. "Unknown vessel, you will stop and identify yourself. You have entered the territory of the Galactic Council. State your purpose." Jake straightened his uniform and stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Unity. We come in peace, representing the human race. We seek friendship and knowledge." There was a long pause. Then multiple voices began speaking at once, all in different alien languages. The translation system struggled to keep up, but Jake caught words like dangerous, violent, and primitive. Finally, one voice rose above the others. It was deep and cold, like stones grinding together. "Humans, we know of your species. You will follow our escort ships to the Council Station. Do not deviate from the course or you will be destroyed." 3 sleek ships appeared around the Unity, their weapons clearly visible. Jake had no choice but to follow. As they flew deeper into the alien fleet, he could see his crew staring in wonder at the incredible variety of ships and beings around them. The Council Station was massive, bigger than any city on Earth. It looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space, with docking ports that could handle ships of any size or shape. The Unity seemed tiny as it was guided to one of the smaller ports. Ambassador Kevin Hughes joined Jake and Dr. Martinez as they prepared to meet the aliens. Kevin had been chosen for his diplomatic skills, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. They were about to represent all of humanity to creatures from other worlds. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and they stepped into a corridor that curved upward in both directions. The gravity felt normal, but everything else was alien. The walls glowed with soft light that seemed to come from within the metal itself. Strange symbols covered every surface, probably writing in dozens of different languages. Their escort was a tall, thin creature with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished green stone. It didn't speak, just gestured for them to follow. They walked through corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size imaginable. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others crawled on multiple limbs, and a few seemed to float without touching the ground at all. They entered a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. In the center was a circular platform, with 12 seats arranged around it. Most of the seats were occupied by creatures that could only be the leaders of different alien races. The largest seat held a massive reptile-like being with golden scales and eyes like burning coals. This was Elder Zix of the Zephyrians, the most powerful race in the council. Next to him sat a creature that looked like a giant insect, its multiple eyes reflecting the light like jewels. This was Queen Ithara of the Vex, leaders of the Hive. Worlds, other seats held beings that defied description. One looked like living crystal, another appeared to be made of flowing water held in a humanoid shape. At the far end sat the strangest of all, a creature that resembled a walking tree with flowers blooming along its branches. This was Xynthia of the Verdani, the only species that seemed truly peaceful. Elder Zix spoke first, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Humans, We have watched your world for many cycles. We have seen your wars, your violence, your inability to live in peace even with your own kind. You are a dangerous species. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Honored beings, we come seeking knowledge and friendship. Yes, we have had conflicts in our past, but we have learned from them. We want to join the galactic community and contribute to peace. Queen Ithara's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. Contribute to peace? Your species has been at war for its entire recorded history. Even now, as you reach for the stars, you have weapons on your ship. You cannot be trusted. Ambassador Hughes tried to explain. Those weapons are only for defense. We didn't know what we might encounter out here. Surely you can understand the need for caution when exploring the unknown. Caution? Elder Zix leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the humans. Or preparation for conquest. Your species seeks to dominate everything it encounters. We have seen this pattern before, and we will not allow it to spread to the stars. The debate continued for hours. The humans presented evidence of humanity's progress, their art, their science, their growing understanding of cooperation. They spoke of the United Earth government and how the old nations had finally learned to work together. But for every positive example they gave, the council members pointed to wars, conflicts, and violence from human history. Only Xynthia spoke in humanity's defense. Her voice was like wind through leaves, soft but clear. To judge a species only by its past is to deny the possibility of growth. These humans have traveled far to meet us with open hands. Should we not at least give them a chance to prove themselves? But her words fell on deaf ears. The other council members had already made up their minds. They saw humans as a threat to the ordered peace they had maintained for thousands of years. Elder, Zix stood, his full height making him tower over everyone in the chamber. The council has decided. Humans are too dangerous to be allowed into galactic civilization. You will return to your solar system immediately. Energy barriers will be placed around your space to prevent you from leaving. This is for the safety of all civilized worlds. The judgment hit the humans like a physical blow. After dreaming of joining a galactic community for so long, they were being cast out before they even had a chance to prove themselves. Please, Dr. Martinez said, her voice barely a whisper. Give us a chance. We can change. We can be better. The decision is final, Queen Ithara declared. Your escort will take you back to your ship. You have 1 day to leave our territory. As diecast, they were led away. Jake caught Xynthia's eye. The plant-like being seemed sad, her flowers drooping slightly. She mouthed words that the translation system picked up. I am sorry. The journey back to the Unity was silent. The three humans were lost in their own thoughts, trying to process what had just happened. Humanity had reached for the stars, only to be told they weren't worthy of them. As the Unity began its long journey back to Earth, Jake looked at the alien fleet one last time. They had made their choice, and now humanity would have to live with the consequences. But something deep inside him refused to accept defeat. If the galaxy wouldn't accept them as they were, then maybe it was time for humanity to become something better. The stars were still there, still calling to them. And someday, somehow, humans would answer that call again. 50 years had passed since the Galactic Council slammed the door in humanity's face. 50 years since energy barriers had been placed around Earth's solar system, trapping humans like animals in a cage. But if the Council expected humanity to wither and die in isolation, they were about to learn how wrong they had been. Director Amy Collins stood in the center of the New Geneva Research Institute, watching holographic displays that showed the latest breakthrough in human technology. At 73 years old, she had dedicated her entire adult life to this moment. She had been a young lieutenant on the Unity when humanity first met the aliens. Now she was leading the greatest scientific project in human history. The new fusion cores are running at 98% efficiency, reported Dr. Helen Carter, her white hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. That's 15% better than anything the Council uses, according to our scans of their old ships. Amy nodded, still amazed at how far they had come. When the barriers first went up, many people on Earth had fallen into despair. Some had wanted to give up, to accept that humanity would never leave their solar system, but others had seen the isolation as a challenge, a chance to prove what humans could really do when they worked together. The change hadn't happened overnight. The first 10 years after the barriers were installed had been difficult. Earth's governments had argued about what to do next. Some wanted to try breaking through the barriers by force. Others suggested sending peaceful messages to the Council, begging for another chance. But slowly, a new approach had emerged. If the galaxy wouldn't accept humanity as they were, then humanity would become something better. The old divisions between nations began to fade as people realized they were all trapped together. They could either fight among themselves and prove the Council right, or work together and prove them wrong. Commander Roy Patterson walked into the research center, his blue uniform marking him as part of the human defense fleet. At 45, he was young for a fleet commander, but the new military structure valued skill over age. The defense fleet wasn't designed to conquer other worlds, instead it existed to protect Earth and explore every corner of their prison. The new ships are ready for their first test flights, Roy announced. The Defender-class cruisers are faster and more maneuverable than anything we've built before, and the best part is they're completely human-designed. No alien technology needed. Amy smiled at that. In the early years, humans had tried to copy alien technology from the scans they had taken during first contact. But copying someone else's work only got them so far. Real progress came when they stopped trying to be like the aliens and started being better humans. Chief Engineer Tony Walsh looked up from his workstation, his hands still covered in the special polymers used in the new ship hulls. "The energy efficiency is incredible," he said. "We're getting twice the speed with half the power consumption. And the hulls can repair themselves if they take damage." The secret was in how humans thought about problems. The aliens in the Council had been using the same basic technologies for thousands of years. They had achieved perfection in their own minds, so they saw no need to improve. But humans were never satisfied with good enough. They always wanted to make things better, faster, stronger. Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the room carrying a tablet full of data. As the head of the Behavioral Sciences Division, she had been studying how isolation had changed human society. What she had discovered surprised everyone, including herself. "The latest social integration reports are remarkable," she announced. "Crime rates are at the lowest point in recorded history. International conflicts have virtually disappeared. People are more cooperative, more focused on common goals than ever before. It seemed impossible, but the numbers didn't lie. Being trapped together had forced humanity to either destroy itself or learn to work together. They had chosen cooperation, and the results were amazing. The old tribal instincts that had once led to war were now channeled into friendly competition between research teams and exploration crews." Amy walked to the main viewing window and looked out at the construction yards in Earth orbit. Dozens of new ships were being built, each one incorporating the latest human innovations. The vessels looked nothing like the alien ships they had seen 50 years ago. Human ships were sleek and organic in shape, designed to work with their crews rather than simply carry them. "Status report on the monitoring stations?" she asked. Lieutenant Claire Walsh, Tony's daughter and a rising star in the intelligence division, stepped forward with her report. "All deep space sensors are functioning perfectly. We're still tracking Galactic Council communications across 17 different star systems. Their technology hasn't improved significantly in the past 50 years. If anything, they seem to be falling behind their own previous capabilities." This was perhaps the most interesting discovery of all. While humanity had been forced to innovate and improve, the Galactic Council had grown comfortable with their superiority. They had no external threats, no challenges to force them to advance. Their rigid hierarchy and fear of change had led to stagnation. President Rachel Stone appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from the United Earth Government headquarters. At 68, she still carried herself with the confidence that had made her a natural leader during humanity's darkest hours. "Citizens of Earth," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the solar system. Today marks exactly 50 years since we were cast out from the galactic community. Some said we would not survive. Others predicted we would turn on each other in desperation. Instead, we have become stronger, more united, and more capable than ever before in human history. Amy watched as President Stone continued her speech, outlining the achievements of the past 5 decades. They had colonized Mars and established mining operations in the asteroid belt. They had built cities that floated in the clouds of Venus and research stations in the outer planets. The solar system that had once been their prison was now their thriving home. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity itself. The people watching this broadcast were different from their ancestors who had first reached for the stars. They were calmer, more thoughtful, more willing to work together. The isolation had burned away the worst parts of human nature and left something stronger behind. We are no longer the same species that the Council rejected 50 years ago, President Stone continued. We have learned from our mistakes, grown beyond our limitations, and proven that change is possible. We are ready for whatever challenges the universe might bring. As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the research center. Lieutenant Walsh's fingers flew over her console as she tried to identify the source of the alert. Director Collins, she called out, her voice tight with concern. We're receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Monitoring Network. Something big is happening out there. The Council's outer rim colonies have gone completely silent. All of them. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. In 50 years of monitoring Council communications, they had never seen anything like this. Entire star systems didn't just go quiet without reason. What about the Council's response, she asked. They're mobilizing their entire fleet, Claire reported, her face pale as she read the intercepted messages. From what I can tell, they're facing something they've never encountered before, something that has them terrified. Roy stepped closer to the displays, his military training taking over. Any indication of what they're up against? Negative, sir, but whatever it is, it's moving fast. 3 more systems just went dark while we've been talking. Amy looked around the room at the people who had dedicated their lives to making humanity better. 50 years ago, they had been rejected by the galaxy as too dangerous to be trusted. Now it seemed the galaxy might need the very qualities that had made them so feared. Keep monitoring all channels, she ordered, and prepare a full briefing for the president. Something tells me our isolation is about to come to an end. Outside the viewing window, the stars continued to shine, but Amy couldn't shake the feeling that some of those lights were about to go out forever. The galaxy that had rejected humanity was in trouble, and whether they liked it or not, humans might be the only ones who could help. The question was, would they? The emergency briefing room in the United Earth Government building had never been so crowded. President Rachel Stone sat at the head of the table, her face grave as she studied the reports spread before her. Around her sat the most important people in human civilization, all trying to make sense of what was happening beyond their prison walls. Director Amy Collins activated the main holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the star systems that had gone silent over the past 3 days. The pattern was terrifying in its speed and efficiency. 17 systems have gone completely dark, Amy reported. No communications, no energy signatures, nothing. It's as if entire civilizations have simply vanished. Fleet Admiral Nick Carter, Roy Patterson's superior and commander of all human space forces, studied the display with the eyes of a career military man. What's the Council's response been? Lieutenant Claire Walsh stepped forward with the latest intelligence reports. They've deployed their entire 7th Fleet under Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrians. 300 ships, including their most advanced dreadnoughts. They're moving to intercept whatever is causing this. Science Director Helen Carter, now in her 70s, but still sharp as ever, manipulated the display to show energy readings from the affected systems. The last transmissions we intercepted before each system went dark all mentioned the same thing. Ships unlike anything they had ever seen, moving in perfect formation, completely ignoring all attempts at communication. Biological ships, added Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had been analyzing the fragmentary data. The few detailed scans that got through before the blackouts show vessels that appear to be alive. They grow, they adapt, They repair themselves without any visible technology. President Stone rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of leadership more than ever. Any theories about who or what we're dealing with? Amy pulled up another display, this one showing deep space sensor readings from the edge of the galaxy. Based on the trajectory analysis, whatever this is came from beyond the galactic rim. Dark space. They've been traveling for a very long time to get here. How long? Asked Defense Secretary Greg Thompson. Possibly thousands of years, Amy replied. And they're moving with purpose. This isn't random destruction. They're following specific patterns, targeting certain types of worlds first. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were witnessing the beginning of what could be the end of galactic civilization, and they were powerless to do anything about it from behind their barriers. Claire's console chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Admiral Kekstar's fleet has made contact with the unknown vessels, she announced. Patching through the Council's military frequency now. The voice that filled the room was tight with barely controlled panic. It belonged to Admiral Kekstar himself, the proud Zephyrian who had once stood beside Elder Zix when humanity was cast out. Council command. This is Admiral Kekstar. We have engaged the enemy fleet. Repeat. We are engaged with hostile forces. Their technology is beyond anything in our databases. They're adapting to our weapons in real time. Our plasma cannons are having no effect after the first few shots. The transmission crackled with interference. Then Kekstar's voice returned, more desperate than before. They're not just destroying our ships, they're draining them. Some kind of energy transfer beam that leaves our vessels as empty husks. Council command, we need immediate reinforcement. We need everything you can send. The signal cut to static, then returned one final time. They're everywhere. How did they multiply so fast? Council command, if anyone receives this transmission, tell the galaxy that we tried. Tell them that the 7th Fleet died with honor. Kekstar out. Silence filled the briefing room. The mighty Galactic Council, with their 1,000-year-old technology and vast fleets, had just lost 300 ships in a matter of hours. Bring up the long-range sensors, President Stone ordered quietly. I want to see what we're dealing with. The holographic display changed to show the outer rim where the battle had taken place. What they saw made everyone in the room gasp. The space where Admiral Kekstar's fleet had been was now filled with strange, organic-looking vessels. But there weren't just 300 of them anymore. There were thousands. They're reproducing, Dr. Rodriguez whispered. Using the destroyed ships as raw material. Fleet Admiral Carter leaned forward, his tactical mind trying to process what he was seeing. Show me their movement patterns. The display tracked the alien fleet's progression through space. The pattern was methodical, efficient, and absolutely terrifying. They were moving toward the galactic core, consuming everything in their path, and growing stronger with each victory. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach the Council's core worlds in 2 weeks, Amy calculated. And based on their reproduction rate, they'll outnumber the entire Council fleet by a factor of 10. What about our defenses? Asked President Stone. Could our barriers hold them? Unknown, Admiral Carter replied honestly. The barriers were designed to keep us in, not to keep something like this out. And if these creatures can adapt to Council technology, they might be able to adapt to ours as well. Another priority alert sounded. This time it wasn't from the Council's military channels. It was from their diplomatic frequency, and the voice was familiar to everyone who had studied the recordings from 50 years ago. This is Xynthia of the Verdani, speaking for what remains of the Galactic Council. The plant-like being's voice carried through the speakers, filled with a sadness that transcended species barriers. Our outer colonies are gone. Our greatest fleet has been destroyed. The enemy advances toward our core worlds, and we have no power to stop them. There was a long pause, then Xynthia continued. I know that 50 years ago, we judged your species, harshly. We feared what you might become, what chaos you might bring to our ordered galaxy. We were wrong. We let our fear blind us to your potential. President Stone stood up, her hands pressed flat against the table. Everyone in the room could feel the weight of this moment. We are dying, Cynthia's voice continued. Our worlds are being consumed one by one. Our people face extinction. We have tried everything, used every weapon, deployed every strategy we know. Nothing works. These creatures adapt to everything we throw at them. Another pause, longer this time. When Cynthia spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. We need help. We need the one thing we cast out because we feared it. We need the chaos, the unpredictability, the refusal to accept defeat that makes humans so dangerous. We need you. The transmission ended, leaving the room in complete silence. For 50 years, humanity had dreamed of this moment, of being accepted by the galactic community, but not like this, not as a last desperate hope in the face of extinction. President Stone looked around the table at each person in turn. These were the people who had guided humanity through 5 decades of isolation, who had helped their species grow beyond what they once were. The barriers, she said quietly. Can we get through them? Amy nodded. Our latest ships should be able to break through, yes. The technology has advanced enough. And our fleet? How many ships can we deploy? Admiral Carter consulted his tablet. 150 vessels of various classes. Not much compared to what the Council lost, but they're equipped with our latest technology, which is untested. Against this enemy, pointed out Dr. Rodriguez. Everything is untested against this enemy, President Stone replied. That might be our advantage. She walked to the viewing window and looked out at the orbital shipyards where human vessels waited, in the darkness. Each ship represented decades of innovation, of learning to be better than they once were. The question isn't whether we can help them, she said finally. The question is whether we should. They cast us out. They imprisoned us. They refused to even give us a chance to prove ourselves. And now they're dying, added Amy quietly. President Stone nodded. Yes, now they're dying. And if we don't help them, we might be next. She turned back to the table, her decision made. Prepare the fleet. All ships full deployment. And send a message to Cynthia. Tell her that humanity remembers what it means to be the underdog. Tell her we're coming. The galaxy that had rejected them was about to discover what humans could really do when the stakes were life and death. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Council territory, like ghosts returning from the dead. 150 ships of sleek, organic design, their hulls gleaming with the advanced materials that 50 years of isolation had produced. At their head flew the Defender, with Captain Sam Parker at the helm. Sam had been born after the barriers went up, part of the generation that had never known a galaxy beyond their solar system. But he had grown up on stories of first contact, of the rejection that had shaped his entire world. Now at 35, he was leading humanity back to the stars under circumstances no one could have imagined. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Council fleet, reported Lieutenant Alex Reed from the communications station. It's Cynthia herself. The main screen flickered to life, showing the plant-like being who had first spoken for humanity 50 years ago. She looked older now, her bark-like skin marked with deep grooves, her flower petals dulled with age and stress. But her eyes still held the same kindness that had made her different from the other council members. Captain Parker, she said, her voice filled with relief and gratitude. Thank you for coming. I know what it means for your people to leave your safety behind. We're here to help, Sam replied simply. What's the tactical situation? The display changed to show a 3-dimensional map of the galactic core. Red markers indicated the enemy fleet, now numbering in the tens of thousands. They were advancing, on 3 fronts, consuming everything in their path. They've taken 47 systems in the past week, Cynthia explained. Each victory makes them stronger. They turn our own ships against us, transform our technology into something we can't fight. We've lost 2 more fleets trying to stop them. Commander Lisa Grant, Sam's tactical officer, studied the enemy formations with professional interest. They're moving like a swarm intelligence. No individual commanders, no single point of failure. How do we fight something that thinks as one? Mind? That's what we need to figure out, Sam said. What do you know about their biology? Dr. Helen Carter, now aboard the human flagship as their chief scientist, pulled up the analysis data. From what we can tell, they're not machines or traditional life forms. They exist somewhere in between. They consume energy directly, breaking down matter at the molecular level and rebuilding it to serve their needs. Perfect adaptation, added Dr. Elena Rodriguez. They learn from every attack, every defense. By the time you fire a second shot, they've already figured out how to counter it. Sam nodded grimly. It was worse than they had thought, but something about the situation felt familiar. These creatures reminded him of something from human history, from the old wars before the barriers. "Show me their attack patterns again," he requested. The holographic display replayed the last major battle, where the Council's second fleet had been wiped out near the Vex home worlds. The enemy ships moved with mechanical precision, adapting their formations and weapons with each exchange. "They're fighting like machines," Sam observed. "Perfect efficiency, perfect adaptation, perfect logic. But what if that's also their weakness?" Captain Roy Patterson, now Admiral Patterson and Sam's superior, appeared on the communication screen from his command ship. "Explain your thinking, Captain." "During the old wars on Earth, our ancestors faced enemies who were better equipped, better trained, more numerous, but humans won anyway. Why? Because we didn't fight fair. We were unpredictable, chaotic, willing to try things that made no logical sense." Commander Grant caught on immediately. These creatures expect logical responses. They adapt to patterns, to things they can understand and counter. But what if we don't give them patterns? "Exactly," Sam said. "We need to be as random and unpredictable as possible. Make them adapt to something new every single time." The plan that emerged over the next few hours was unlike anything in the military textbooks of any species. Instead of standard formations and tried tactics, the human fleet would operate on pure improvisation. Each ship would act independently, using whatever strategy seemed right in the moment, changing approaches constantly to prevent adaptation. "It's insane," admitted Admiral Patterson. "No military force has ever operated this way. There's no coordination, no unified strategy." "That's the point," Sam replied. "We're going to fight like humans, not like machines." The combined fleet moved toward the enemy's advance force near the crystal worlds of the Shadari. 3,000 enemy ships waited in perfect formation, their organic hulls pulsing with stolen energy. Against them came 150 human vessels and what remained of the Council fleet, maybe 200 ships total. "All human vessels. This is Captain Parker," Sam broadcast on the open channel. "Remember, there are no rules in this. Fight. Use every trick you can think of. Be creative, be unpredictable, be human. Good luck." The battle began unlike any in galactic history. Lieutenant Alex Reed launched his fighter in a spinning corkscrew pattern that made no tactical sense, but confused the enemy targeting systems. Commander Sarah Evans ordered her ship to fly backwards, while firing something no logical mind would attempt. Captain Mike Torres used his ship's repair drones as weapons, programming them to attach to enemy hulls and explode. The Devourers tried to adapt, but every time they learned to counter one human tactic, the humans switched to something completely different. Sam watched his officers fight with a combination of skill and madness that would have horrified military academies across the galaxy. "Captain, the enemy's adaptation rate is slowing," reported Commander Grant with excitement in her voice. "They can't keep up with the constant changes." But the battle was far from over. Despite their confusion, the Devourers still outnumbered the Allied fleet by 8-1. Human ships were taking heavy damage and several had already been lost. "We need to find their command center," Sam decided. "Something has to be coordinating this swarm." Deep scans revealed the answer. At the center of the enemy formation was a massive vessel, different from all the others. It pulsed with bioelectric energy, sending signals to every other ship in the fleet. "That's their queen ship," Dr. Carter announced. "Take it out, and the rest might lose coordination." "How do we get through 50 layers of defenders?" asked Commander Grant. Sam looked at his crew. These people who had grown up in isolation but had never lost the human spirit of defiance. We do something no sane person would attempt. The plan was simple in its madness. The defender would charge straight at the Queen ship, not dodging or weaving, but flying in a perfectly straight line at maximum speed. Every other human ship would do the same thing from different angles, all converging on the center simultaneously. They'll expect us to be clever, Sam explained. They'll adapt to fancy maneuvers and tactical brilliance, but they won't expect us to just charge in like berserkers. The assault began with 50 human ships accelerating toward the enemy center from all directions. The Devourers scrambled to respond, but their perfect adaptation algorithms couldn't process such apparent stupidity. The defender took heavy fire as it raced toward the Queen ship, its hull buckling under the assault. But Sam held course, his crew working frantically to keep the ship together just long enough. Almost there, Alex reported from his station. Hull integrity at 20% and falling. 15 seconds to target, added Commander Grant. Queen ship filled their view screen, a massive organic construct that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. Sam could see weapon ports opening along its surface, preparing to deliver a killing blow. Alex, prepare the upload package, Sam ordered. This was their secret weapon developed during the desperate hours of planning. Not a bomb or a missile, but a computer virus designed by the finest human programmers. Not to destroy the Queen ship, but to confuse it, to introduce the one thing the Devourers couldn't adapt to. Complete chaos. Package ready, Captain. Fire. The upload streaked across the remaining distance and penetrated the Queen ship's biological hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the massive vessel began to convulse, its perfect coordination breaking down as the virus spread through its systems. Across the battlefield, Devourer ships suddenly turned on each other, their hive mind fractured by the chaos virus. The perfect swarm intelligence that had made them unstoppable became their downfall as confused signals spread throughout their network. Within hours, the entire Devourer fleet was destroying itself, ship turning against ship in a frenzy of self-destruction. The galaxy was saved. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and the Council tallied their losses, Xynthia found herself face-to-face with Captain Parker on the observation deck of the Defender. "How did you know that would work?" she asked. Sam looked out at the stars, no longer blocked by barriers, finally open to humanity once again. "Because we know what it's like to be chaotic and unpredictable. The Council feared that about us, but it's also what saved everyone." "We were wrong about your people," Xynthia admitted. "We thought your chaos would destroy the galaxy. Instead, it saved it." "We're not the same species you met 50 years ago," Sam replied. "The isolation changed us, made us better, but it didn't make us less human." President Stone's voice reached them through the communication system, broadcasting from Earth. "The barriers around our solar system have been deactivated.